Hi, I'm Jay Cottrell, and I am the executive chef for the Mid-Ohio Food Collective. We're here today to review some basic knife skills, some safety, some best habits when you're using knives in our kitchens at home. We are on location at the beautiful Ohio Poultry Association, and so we want to give a shout out to our friends in this beautiful kitchen that they let us use. All right, so one of the more important things about your knife skills is what knife you're actually using in general. So when we select our knives, it's going to be really important. There are stamped knives and there are forged knives. Now, personally, I prefer a forged knife, and the way to tell is that it has this thick piece of metal here called a bolster. It kind of makes it a little heavier and a little more balanced in your hand. Stamped knives can still be great, and if that's your preference, whatever is most comfortable for you, just make sure you're comfortable holding the knife. Now, in a kitchen, people always ask me, Jay, what kind of knife should I buy for my kitchen? Well, you gotta buy good knives. Good knives aren't necessarily inexpensive, but you don't have to buy them all. That's the good news. So I think for my purposes, I like to stick with 3 types of knives. We have our chef's knife. This is an 8-inch chef's knife. It's your workhorse of your kitchen. You're gonna do most of your cutting and chopping. You can cut big vegetables, you can cut smaller vegetables. It's great for that rocking motion if you're slicing. Very, very good all-around knife. The other knife that everyone should have in their kitchen is a good serrated knife. This is for your soft stuff, like your bread, your tomatoes, a sandwich, things that you might want to give a little more of a sawing motion to that you don't want to crush because it might be very, very delicate. And then finally, a paring knife. Something smaller that you can do that little work with, like you're taking the tops off of strawberries or getting little pieces. You know, if you have to take a little piece of something when you're peeling a vegetable and you got to get a little piece, carve a little piece out. This is very helpful for that. I think these 3 knives do 99.9% of the work that I do in a kitchen, and so those are the ones that I would recommend everyone have in theirs. Now, next, let's talk a little bit about what we're cutting on. I prefer to cut on wood or a heavy plastic cutting board. You know, if I'm cutting raw meats and stuff, I definitely stick with the plastic versus the wood. But if I'm doing vegetables and fruits and things like that that aren't going to be that contamination danger, then I like to use the wood cutting board. I'm kind of old-fashioned that way. What I do avoid, sometimes you'll see these stone or glass cutting boards. Those tend to take the edge off your knife a little faster than you would want them to. So I do kind of steer away from those most of the time. Now, when I do put my cutting board down, one thing you'll notice, I got this nice granite countertop here, but my cutting board kind of slides around on it when I put it down. So a little trick from our kitchen to yours, grab some damp paper towels or a damp kitchen towel and just put those right underneath of your cutting board. And then when you put your cutting board down on top, notice that doesn't slide anymore. And that's gonna make that much safer for me to work on. Another piece before we start cutting is how do we hold that knife? Now, in our kitchens, we have lots of volunteers with all kinds of experience. And so one of the things I watch, or inexperience as a matter of fact, so one of the things I always really make sure to pay attention to if we do give them a knife is how they're holding it. People tend to want to do kind of one of these things with a knife with their finger. And when they're cutting like that, that's kind of dangerous. It's a little unstable. The way that we suggest to hold a knife is one of 2 ways. Most chefs, you'll notice, hold a knife and they pinch it here on the front of their handle, the back of their blade. And so it's kind of a pinch hold right there, and wrap the rest of your fingers around the handle. This gives you a lot of dexterity and control of your knife and a control of that tip in case you're doing small work. Or you can come right through and do the big work. And you always know a chef because when they cut a whole bunch of stuff with a knife like that, we've all got the same callus right here on our fingers, so you'll always be able to tell. Another way, if you want to hold a knife, you can hold it completely by the handle and come down. Just try to avoid holding it here and creating a situation that might be a little less stable. Make sure we're staying very stable with our knife. Now, before we start cutting, we're going to do some root vegetables and some onions today. Some of us, I think there's a recipe that we can find, and we'll share that online with folks if they're interested. And this will kind of correspond with some of that recipe. So before we start cutting, we're going to have to do a little peeling of our vegetables. And this is the one piece of kitchen equipment I don't think I could ever do without. And it's probably the least expensive thing in my kitchen, and it's wonderful. And all the chefs will tell you, for peeling vegetables, this little $2 Y peeler is the way to go. So when you find these, get yourself a couple of them and you use those to peel vegetables. So you'll notice I can just come right down and you'll see how easy that makes it to peel our carrot here. Very simple. Come back and do the back side, and we're already done with carrot number 1. You apply very little pressure. You know, that's a good thing about having a sharp piece of equipment, is you don't have to apply too much pressure. When we're applying a lot of pressure to an item, that's when slips happen. That's when you can hurt yourself. So to use a thing that just easily glides through your food is how you want to do it. I highly recommend one of these for your kitchen. All right, everybody, so we've got our carrot peeled, and so now we want to do our carrot cut. And so a lot of us are used to kind of those coins that we cut with the carrot, but I'm going to show you a little different way to cut it, and it's called an oblique cut. It's kind of makes your dish look a little fancier. They're nice bite-sized pieces that are easy to cut, and a carrot or a parsnip are the perfect shape for this cut. So what I do is I take my carrot and I lay it horizontally, and I take my knife and I come at it at an angle. So you see how we're working here. I take my first cut right through the carrot, and then I just flip them over to the other side and do a half turn and come right back, leave my knife at the same angle the whole time. And you'll see how I'm cutting, and it makes these nice little, I don't know, triangular style pieces. Now what will happen if you get a thick carrot, or you get towards the thicker end of the carrot, what you can do is stop turning it a half turn and start turning it a quarter turn. And you'll still have these great pieces that are bite size and look nice in a dish and add variety and texture to any of the dishes that you're using. All right, so next we're going to cut our rutabaga. Now you'll see a rutabaga has a pretty irregular shape. It's like a beet or a turnip. And when we're cutting, we want to be really careful to try to create as many flat sides as possible, because that's the side we're going to cut on. We don't want to keep cutting on this curvy piece. We want to create something flat with this that we can put onto the cutting board, and that's going to keep us safe by making sure that this thing isn't moving around while we're coming after it with a sharp knife. So the first thing I'm going to do before I peel it, I'm just going to take the end that's kind of naturally there and create a flat end to this. And then I'm going to grab my Y peeler that everybody knows how much I love, and I'm just going to take and come right through the rutabaga as well with my peeler, and just take off that outside layer, which is kind of tough and kind of waxy. All right, so we have cut our flat spot on our rutabaga, and we have peeled off all of the additional peel from the outside. So we have a nice flat item to work with, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this flat item and make more flat areas that we can work with. So we're just going to do what would be called a medium dice on this rutabaga. So we're going to come from the top and come down. Notice I never put my hands underneath of where I'm cutting. And even if we're cutting long ways, you always want to keep your knuckles kind of bent, which makes the knife travel down safe. We don't want to hold things like with flat fingers. That's where accidents happen. And whatever hand you're using to cut, the most important finger to watch is the thumb on the opposite hand, because that's the one that kind of slides out there sometimes. That's where most of the cuts happen. So just be careful and mindful of that. So now we've created these discs that are flat that'll be easy to work with, and they're all about the same thickness. That's the other really important thing about knife skills. It's not just that you get a perfect shape, it's that you get a consistent size. When things are a consistent size, then they cook at the same time and they get completed at the same time. So you don't have big pieces that are undercooked and little pieces that are overcooked. So that's one of the important things about knife skills in general. Always keep that in mind. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. So now we just come the other direction here, very simple, and then just make little cubes And we've got ourselves a nice medium to large dice on our rutabaga. There will be, because of the nature of the vegetables, some little pieces that are inconsistent, but you can see for the most part, all of our sizes are right about the same shape and size. And that'll make for a nice presentation and a nice even cooking. All right, guys, next up is our onion. And I know that a lot of folks have a lot of ways of cutting an onion, but my favorite way to cut an onion is as fast as possible because they make me cry. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm pretty sensitive, so I like to get it done right away. So in anticipation of that, I've taken off some of the paper from the outside already so that I didn't have to mess with that in the middle of cutting this. If you haven't taken the paper off, a good way to do that, and you don't want to spend a lot of extra time on that initial step, go ahead and cut it in half first. You go from stem to stern right through the stem here. And then you can take your top, just kind of trim that. And if you have extra paper, this makes it a lot easier to take that off from the outside. I'm gonna do the same here and just take off the little tip. And now we have 2/2 of an onion. Now, when I do a dice on an onion, I like to leave this piece on because that helps keep the onion together. You'll see some folks like to do kind of this horizontal cut in their onion, and I think it's okay if you like to do it that way, but what I kind of like to do is I'll take my vertical cuts around the shape of an onion instead of just straight down. So it kind of mimics the same thing of cutting and making these side pieces smaller so that you don't get these giant pieces on the sides. So you'll notice what I want to do is take my knife and come right here all the way to the stem, not quite all the way through. If one gets away from you, it is okay. Just kind of help keep it together there. And it's that easy. So I've got all my vertical cuts around the shape of the onion. So now that we have our vertical cuts, we're gonna come the other direction. And this way, you're just gonna go straight down. We're doing vertical again, but we're going perpendicular to the initial cuts. But these ones, we can just go straight down. We don't have to follow the shape of the onion here. And you'll notice as I'm doing it, I always try to kind of keep my area organized. That way I don't have onion pieces falling all over the place. And then I come down here, down the sides here, and there you go. We've used up all of our onion. And when you look, it's all a perfectly diced onion. All right, and that concludes our knife skills demonstration. We want to thank everyone who joined us today. We appreciate your participation with us. We appreciate donations. We appreciate your volunteerism. We could not do what we do without all of you. So from our kitchen to yours, a huge thank you and the happiest of holidays.